Hi, and welcome to Mental Health Now. And in the last few weeks, we've been talking about our mental health, including trauma, and in light of us all being in lockdown and everything that's been going on the last month or so, we're going to be continuing the conversation of trauma and actually going into why friendships help trauma. So I've got some of my friends here. It's quite nice that I actually can say you guys are my friends. Antonio, you are my friend. That's quite nice, you know? It's fun that we get to chat about this together.
It is, yeah.
True. So Anna, you're our expert, which is fun. Tell us, why are friends so important for our mental health?
You know, what's fascinating about the human brain is that everything in it has been designed to survive and thrive as part of a tribe or, you know, other people. Everything. When you think about the structures of the brain, and we talked a little bit about this the last time we spoke with Pastor Gary and Rocky, we talked about like how the brain is organized, and it is an immense, incredible mixture of parts that are organized to work together, but every single aspect of the human brain has been designed to function and thrive and exist in connection with other human beings. So friendships are incredibly important because they are the context in which, especially the broken brain or, you know, the traumatized brain, it's the context where the broken brain heals. There is no healing without real friendships. Real social support is absolutely vital for the healing process of the brain. And one of the things that real friendships do for you is that sense of, well, in psychological terms, we would refer to it as reciprocity, which is a big word. But reciprocity is that feeling of safety that you experience when you feel like you're being held in someone else's heart or someone else's mind. And that's what true social connection is. And until you have that, you can't really heal.
Wow. So it really does require that another person for that process or that healing to take place. So when you say in your head and your heart, is that knowing that someone is thinking about you and loving you? Is it that practical?
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess another way of putting it would be feeling that you are understood.
Sure,
and feeling that someone else feels how you feel.
Yeah.
So that feeling that really you're you know, there's a great quote from a German philosopher named Heidegger, and he said that you only know that you exist when you feel listened to.
Yep. Wow.
So that real, genuine feeling that you are understood, you're being listened to, someone understands you and someone feels what you're feeling.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, but what if you don't feel like you have, like, what do you do if you feel like you don't have anyone that understands you?
I know, and that's when you experience trauma, Tori. And the research on trauma shows that there are obviously different types of events that can cause trauma. And it's worth reminding everyone what trauma actually is. Trauma isn't an event, it's not a situation that happens. Trauma, in psychological terms, is the emotional and physical imprints that are left in you, in your body, in your brain, from the traumatic event. So it's the kind of the way that trauma shapes your nervous system, the way you feel, the way you think. That's what I mean by trauma. So back to your question, when you don't have that safe, like that feeling of support, that's where you experience trauma. You know, that like your nervous system, your autopilot in your brain, what we call autonomic nervous system, which is the part of your brain that is switched on to like help you run away or fight danger. It responds like it has a three-stage process to kick in. When you experience danger, the first thing that your brain will do automatically, the first resource to find help, is to call for help. Sure. We are hardwired to look at other human beings first and foremost before anything else. When you don't have that, your brain goes on to the next level of safety, which is the fight or flight, which is the internal defense mechanism, which is like it pumps adrenaline to your body to get you ready to run away or to fight danger. When you're not able to run away or fight danger, it kicks in with the third level of safety, which is switching off completely. And that's the freeze response when you collapse. And your brain tells your body to shut down, to just keep you breathing, but to shut everything else down. But remember, the first port of call is other human beings. If you don't have anyone around you, you.
I've got a question on that. So then, what would be the difference, or why do I need a friend if I can just go to a therapist who obviously gets paid to understand me and make me feel understood?
That's a great question, Antonio. I mean, you know I'm a psychologist, so I definitely wouldn't underestimate the value of psychological therapy or any kind of psychological intervention. It is needed and it has a place, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't have it on. It is needed.
That would be good business.
But seriously, though, nothing replaces the value of having this real kind of social connection, which you experience not with someone that you paid to connect with you, but someone that you really feel that sense of, you know me, you see me, first of all, you really see me, and you know me, and you understand me, and I feel that you feel what I'm feeling.
That connection,
That's the real thing that can be so important. But people underestimate this, don't they?
Yeah.
When something happens, everyone kind of, understands the need for, psychological therapy because you want to pay the expert to help. But actually, there are so many things that you already have at your disposal that are so important. And we used the analogy earlier with Gary of like the computer, like your brain is like a computer, right? If your computer breaks, do you just call IT support and like straight away? Actually, if you do, the tech guys are probably going to ask you a bunch of questions like, have you tried restarting your computer, ma'am? Have you tried?
Rip it out from the wall.
Seriously, have you tried closing your tabs? Your hundreds of tabs that you have open. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? I mean, it's like this is why we're having these conversations, so that people can really understand that there's a bunch of things that are so key, like this one.
And I feel like, why do you guys think this is for everyone, I think? I don't know about you guys, but I feel like sometimes in church, in our environment, we get so consumed with what we're doing. So I'm speaking to, like, me and Antonio, like, work together, and we might go to a youth thing together. I'm like, yeah, cool. But if I'm not asking Antonio how he is outside of that, but I'm only focusing on, like, what we're doing, and at the end of the day, I come home and I'm like, why do I feel alone? Or we get so consumed with what we're doing. And like, oh, I've got to go to this, and then I've got to lead this team, I've got to do this, and like, I'm amazing. And I'm like, yeah, but do you have any friends? And I feel like that's an issue. But why is that?
Can I ask a question again? Just to answer that question, Tori. I'm not just pushing it to the side, but I think it goes back to what you were saying, Anna, to Matt earlier about what's the word? Sorry.
Reciprocity?
Pardon?
Reciprocity?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah, I think that's the word.
I don't know.
10 times fast.
But just to clarify that, so if I'm so focused on the task ahead, I'm not giving that...
Reciprocity.
Yeah, I'm not giving that that word.
City.
So then, I think then that's when you wouldn't really find out how someone else is doing, because you're just so focused on the task that that person doesn't feel the... I'm so sorry, guys. With that, I can't say the word. Yeah, reciprocity.
That's it.
Yeah.
You did it.
Nailed it.
Yes.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
But would you say that that's maybe the reason why?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
People may feel alone in a room full of people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, like, excuse me, I've definitely been, even though I grew up in church, but I've always been around people. And there's definitely times where I'll walk into the room, and I would say I'm an outgoing kind of guy, like I'm willing to meet anybody, talk to anybody, but there's definitely times where you walk in, you're like, I'm in a room full of people, and I feel like I don't know anyone.
Gosh,
like it's a real, it definitely is a real thing. I want to question, because before you were talking about trauma and then obviously the experience of needing other people, and that's when trauma sets in. So would I be right in thinking that trauma or a traumatic experience can be as simple as feeling lonely, or a pattern of loneliness, you know, kind of perpetually building up over time? Because I was looking into loneliness recently, you know, and they reckon it's worse than, the effects on the body are worse than being an alcoholic, worse than, or twice as bad as being completely inactive with your, you know, with exercise and things like that. So yeah, is it right in thinking then that loneliness is actually a traumatic experience?
Yeah,
Or causes, or has the same impact of trauma on the brain?
Yeah, it does. And that's such a good way of putting it, actually. It is traumatic. It leaves trauma imprints in your brain. And it's the loneliness and the feeling of, it's almost abandonment, isn't it? That's what comes with progressive loneliness, like you described it. It's that sort of, because again, remember that the first automatic response, it's linked to your autonomic nervous system, which means it's automatic. The first automatic response, human response that your brain will experience when it's experiencing danger is to look for other humans, to look for help. And if you're lonely, that in itself is really traumatic.
Well, I love I'm a people watcher. I love watching people. And one of my favorite things to do is, well, it's not one of my favorite things, but
It's not that deep.
Next time this happens, people are like, they'll watching you going,
oh, there he is.
Look at that weirdo. He's watching people again. No, if you look at a room full of people, and when someone laughs, the first thing people do is try and find eye contact to like share in an experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you guys ever seen that?
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
They want to laugh. They want to engage in this experience together.
Yes.
And your heart kind of sinks if you look around. You're like, oh,
no one.
I don't know. That seems like quite trivial, but I suppose almost just to add on or emphasise, like, there is that desire within all of us that for that heart's connection, for that for that sharing. How do we create environments then for people where that is something that is where we strike a balance between, obviously we're task-orientated people, and at the moment, you know, productivity is at an all-time high. So we get on a Zoom and bam, straight into it. It's like no one's got time for tell me you know, the
connection,
your highlight from your week or anything like that, which we would normally do. We're straight into it. How do we I suppose foster it, especially now?
Oh, you just said like, oh, there's so much in what you said that I'm like, oh, I want to say something about that, and that. Because there's this science behind so much of what you said. First of all, the laughter and how your brain is naturally wired to mimic smiles and people laughing.
Really?
Wow.
That's why
like the yawn thing, like when someone yawns.
Oh yeah, it's like when someone yawns and you just naturally want to yawn. But actually, when someone smiles or when someone is laughing, which is an incredible thing that human beings do actually, which is, physically speaking, laughter is actually it's supposed to be a painful thing. The actual movement of laughing. But it isn't, because it just brings so much pleasure. And what's interesting about that is that, like, you would have all experienced, you know, if you watch a video of someone hysterically laughing, you don't know what they're laughing about. When you start laughing,
Very true.
you feel really stupid. Why am I laughing? Because you're seeing another human being laugh. And you've been hardwired to connect with that. And that's because of a number of things. First of all, we all have mirror neurons in our brains, which is one of the most exciting discoveries of modern neuroscience. Exciting for me. No one else, but it is.
No, we're excited.
It's just incredible. It was actually a group of Italian scientists who were doing some research with monkeys, I think. It was with monkeys, and they wanted to study like Don't worry, it wasn't
No, I
bad
love monkeys.
experiences.
I like them. So cute.
Animals.
I love animals.
No monkeys
Are we
were
going to talk about how
harmed.
great animals are for our mental health? Because that's a real thing too. Just like throw that in there.
I don't
Can we
think
talk about
animals
that?
have friendships.
Antonio, stop.
No,
They do.
will come
I have
back
2
to that.
cats. Okay, great.
I will come back to
We'll
animals.
bring it back next week.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, Italian scientists working with monkeys. No monkeys were harmed in the process of that research, but they were looking at the motion, the neurons associated with movement, and the scientists needed to go and change. So they had some food, which was part of the experiment, and one of the scientists needed to move some food pellets and stuff, and the electrodes were still plugged into the monkey's brain. And as he was touching the food, he happened to look at the computer and he saw the neurons associated with movement and with what was happening there were being activated in the monkey's brain as if the monkey was touching the food.
Oh, wow.
And that's how we found out about mirror neurons that exist not only in monkeys' brains but in human brains as well, which make you literally feel what that person is feeling.
Wow.
This is something that we all have in our brains. Interestingly enough, the mirror neurons, which are the empathy switch in your brain, is located not in the emotional part of the brain, but in the rational part of the brain, which is really interesting. It's in the prefrontal cortex, is the seat of empathy. And this is why we are incredibly attuned, very deeply attuned to other people's emotional states.
Yeah, sure.
That's why when, some of us more than others, I mean, some of us cry in, I don't know, animation movies and things. But it doesn't take much for some of us to cry,
true.
especially if you
Cry
see
out.
someone else. But really, if you see someone else crying or if you see someone else laughing, we're deeply attuned to other people's feeling states and emotional states, and that it's in your brain. You're hardwired to feel what other people feel, which kind of links to what you were saying. But the other interesting thing also, if I may, sorry, I'm jumping in, stop me if I... is I'm going to use a big word, but I can explain. Biobehavioral synchrony that we experience when we have true connection with others. And what this means is that when you experience that kind of, in a real friendship environment where you're kind of really together, you experience this biological and behavioral synchrony, which means that your heart rate starts getting in sync with the other person's heart rate.
Wow.
Your brain waves, your neural firings get into sync. You experience neural mimicry. Our brain literally starts getting into sync with the other person.
So we're like finishing each other's sentences almost. Wow.
And the behavioural mimicry as well, which is why, when people hang out together a lot, they start behaving the same way. Same gestures. That's why.
So on that note, the question is, how do you explain when, for example, I don't know if it's happened to you guys, but when you meet someone and you just, you click.
Yeah.
The one.
The one person that you just meet them and you're like, oh my goodness, you're like my long lost brother. We met for 5 minutes and I feel like I've always known you because we're so similar.
Yeah.
How does that work in that context?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Because we just met each other and then we're so similar.
Isn't it? Yeah, no, it's a great question. I guess, I don't know. I could only make assumptions about that. But I guess it probably links to all of these things. And it probably, there could be so many things that could explain that, I think, in terms of even just the, again, the gestures, that there's something that your brain might be picking up that you can't even explain, but you just feel that connection with someone,
that person,
which is probably what it is. But I don't know, it's a great question because some people do trigger that in you, isn't it? You just go, I get you.
Yeah.
Because that makes me think the whole aspect, obviously, when you look at primary school or secondary school, it's because you have this thing in common, then we're just friends.
Yeah.
So growing up all my life, I was just friends with people who we did the same thing. But now as an adult, I'm starting to realise that a lot of my friends are very different from me.
Yes.
So then now it's not just a click or a thing that we do, but it's a choice. And the longer we're friends, then we become in sync.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the initial thing.
That's a very good way of putting it. So when you're in your kind of childhood, you look for that sync first, and then in your adult years, it's a choice rather than right? So you
Yeah.
choose, you need to be intentional with those choices that you make. And that's what we all tend to do, isn't it? When we're adults, we tend to be more intentional about the deep friendships and the deep connections that we make versus, when we were growing up, and it would be probably like the sporty kids hang out together. And again, it's because you end up, you create attachments with the groups that have more similarity with you and therefore more acceptance as well. So it's kind of, you need that acceptance piece to form attachments.
So with that then, again, this is good, but then going back to people that don't feel like that.
Yeah.
So I was in the park with my friend today, and she has a little 2-year-old boy, and he was running over to these kids by a tree, and he was way younger than all the kids, and they just didn't really care that he wanted to play with them. And he was so excited. He was like, I'm really trying. This one little girl did play with him for a bit, but my friend was telling me that there are so many times that he's with some of the older kids that he wants to play with, and they'll be like, this is big kids only. You can't play with us. Or they'll be like, no, you're too young, you can't do this. And he can, but they just go, you're not like me, so you stay over there. And I mean, he's 2, so I don't know what that actually does, but sure, that continues through school and everything. And how does that kind of impact? I mean, I don't know, we probably would all remember being rejected in primary school or something like that, where someone just goes, I don't want to play with you today. And you're like, what have I done?
Yeah.
Why me?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes that carries on, and then we get older in life, and then we actually, sometimes we do have that instant click, but sometimes you said walk into a room with loads of people and you're like, I know no one.
Yeah.
I feel close to no one, and I'm too scared of rejection.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to step out and go, hi, Matt. Matt's the loveliest guy, and he's so smiley, but I've been rejected my whole life. So how do I take that step of going, hi, Matt?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, that's actually when you experience that rejection repeatedly, and then, it can be more amplified than a 2-year-old, a moment in a park with a 2-year-old. But if you keep experiencing rejection repeatedly, that pattern of rejection is traumatic. And again, back to what trauma actually is. And sometimes people will, again, underestimate these things, and then it's only when something happens in the present, right now, and you feel a certain way, and you didn't even realize that you had that trauma, right?
No, yes, definitely.
Right? And because we tend to kind of underestimate sometimes, again, we think that trauma is only, I don't know, when you experience a war or, those sorts of things.
Worst case scenario.
So you kind of go to the worst case scenarios, but actually, repeated rejection is a traumatic experience, and trauma is that. Trauma is the emotional and physical imprints that stay with you, and the way you experience world after trauma is different. It's with you have a different nervous system.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your present is contaminated by the past, by those
which
things.
I realized recently. I was telling you about. It wasn't a fight, but I had an issue with one of my best friends recently, and it was like you're saying about the little things, and we don't think about it. In the past, there's been times I've been like, hey, I was about to say a name, I'm not going to.
No.
I was about to say, hey, and I'd be like, hey, let's hang out, or hey, we're gonna go here, do you wanna come, do you wanna do this, do you wanna that? And almost next to every time she would say no, and she's genuinely one of my best friends, but almost every time she'd say no to me. And then during lockdown, there was one time where we might have broken the rules, and we went to a friend's place, when I went to see a friend, and we didn't invite her because we were like, she never comes, she never says yes, and she was devastated. Wow. We didn't think she would be that upset. And then we ended up having this massive chat about it, and she was like, she could not believe how hurt she was that we had left her out, which we're in our 20s, we're not in school, we're not just being like, oh, we don't like you. It opened up for us to have the chat of, and I said, every time I ask to hang out with you, you reject me. So then when I was like, I've now learned you're gonna reject me every time, so to save myself, I'm gonna reject you first, because I'm not going to get hurt anymore, and it's just easier for me to go, I'm protecting myself. But then it meant me and her had this divide in our friendship, which we're all good. We had a big chat last week, but we had to have a big chat, and she had to go, what's going on? And I had to say, I'm so sorry, but you hurt me. So I hurt you back, not on purpose, but it was my only way of dealing with my rejection was, like you said, to just, okay, if I reject you first, maybe I can protect myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a good example, actually.
And it's I think that's good because it's like a little thing. Like, as adults, we don't think that happens, but I was like hurt by her.
No, it's so true, though.
It does.
It's so true.
And but it does. It really does. And unless you have the self-awareness to acknowledge that, it can carry on, you can carry that with you.
Yeah.
And it can grow if you don't deal with it. Because it will. And because again, we have our brain is wired to have a natural expectation of attachment and safety in people around us.
Yeah.
So if, when you feel that, you'll start getting into a process of like self-defense and whatever, and you can carry that with you to other relationships as well if you don't have the self-awareness and the intentionality to really, to process that appropriately.
One of the things that I think is so beautiful about the church and the opportunity we have is when people come walking through the door for the first time into our auditorium. And it's in that moment, into our foyer, where they've walked in, whether it be the first time or the 100th time. And we've all talked, where we feel like we're alone. But if it's your first time or you're fairly new to the experience, you've got an opportunity like right then in that moment to, I suppose, break the mold of, you walk into say the supermarket or you walk into Top Shop or something like that, any number of shops where sometimes they'll greet you and other times they'll just pretend you're not there. But we've got an opportunity to acknowledge people for who they are in that moment. Yeah. And you see that, like, if it is that, they're new to the experience of like a recognition, hi, how are you? Like the face, like just lighting up, like, and almost like that sheer relief of, oh my gosh, I'm actually so grateful that someone's actually acknowledged me and engaged me.
I'm seen, yeah.
And so I would imagine over, a lifetime from, anything from 2 years old, albeit trivial, there's stuff though that's slowly building up over time to then, the different relationships that we have. Like, I'm married, but so my friendships have changed. I've moved countries, so my friendships have changed and evolved. And I think something which we want to fast track in our friendships is time. It's like I want the results of a 10-year friendship now. Like I want it now, neglecting maybe the tough conversations or the, do we stick around long enough to develop that rapport with one another? How do we, could you give us some tips though? Because I think we are, obviously people are lonely, people are hurt, people are living with trauma. And there's no doubt there's people in our worlds who have that, who may not necessarily realize that they are traumatized from it. But as a friend, I would really love to know though, what can I be doing to help them? Because I imagine if it's something that they're finding hard, which listening to you and Gary and Rocky, it's, you can't really put words to it. That I'm actually traumatized because of X, Y, and Z. Or I felt this, so therefore this is how I behave, or the way I talk, or whatever. So without, saying to someone, hey, are you traumatized? Or have you got trauma in your life? Oh, don't worry about it. You don't need to give me words. But look, how do we help? Like, obviously, you've talked about empathy and things like that, but how do we really saddle up alongside people, put an arm around them and journey with them? Because for a lifetime of trauma or hurt, it's not going to be an overnight thing.
Absolutely. It's a great question. There's something that we need to understand, that the kind of putting your arm around someone, what that actually can do. Can I unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
So there's a body of science that is called epigenetics. It's basically the study of how adversity in someone's life or trauma can affect your gene expression, particularly with regards to your immune system. What this means is your DNA doesn't change, right? Yeah. But what does change is the way your genes are expressed and turned into the cells of your body that will make up your immune system, okay?
Yeah.
And the study of this, epigenetics, has found that trauma will have a significant impact on gene expression, particularly when it comes to increasing pro-inflammatory stuff in your body. Basically, you increase very significantly the likelihood of getting inflammation in your body, and it decreases your kind of resistance, your immune system, basically. And this is why this stuff is so important, because trauma and negative things that happen in your life can really change you at a cellular level. Really.
Real.
The other side of this is that real social support and real social connection can revert this, which is remarkable.
That's amazing.
So putting the arm around someone and really being there for someone, I get a bit emotional when I talk about this, and I'm talking about science here, but it really makes me emotional because it can literally change someone at a molecular level.
Yeah.
It can strengthen someone's immune system to have that kind of,
so that hug,
that safety net, that kind of...
we joke about at church, it actually
Oh my
is
goodness,
for people.
yeah, it really, and when people feel that they have that, and they're able, and there's another thing related to this. The way I would describe love, which is an emotion, and it has, it's also a construct. Love is a social construct. Like some people, relationship science views love as a destination, as a status. Love is a Facebook status. It's like, oh, I'm in love. Boom. You put it somewhere, and this is it.
Yeah.
It's permanent. Relationship science, emotion science views love very differently to that. When we see love, when we study love as an emotion, we know that emotions are transient. They come in waves.
Yeah.
They come and they go. Therefore, love is not really just a status. It's something different.
Sure.
And the way I would describe love also in this context that we're talking about is kind of shared moments. It's moments of shared positive emotions.
Yeah.
So every time I experience a positive emotion with you, like joy, like hope, like, every time two or more people experience a positive emotion, that's love.
Wow.
That's good.
And people underestimate this. Again, this makes me emotional. Because people underestimate the value of the micro moments of love, because we're all looking for the big status change. That's what love is.
Hollywood.
And actually, the Hollywood love.
Yeah.
And actually, love is this. I'm feeling really joyful that we're having this conversation, and we happen to be friends, all of us. And this is love. I believe this is a micro moment of love. It's called positivity resonance.
Yeah.
Which is when we all, it resonates, This is life-giving.
Yeah.
This changes me at a cellular level.
Wow.
Having this regularly, having micro moments of love with people that I feel deeply connected to, gives life to my body, to my brain, to my heart. Literally, I'm not speaking figuratively here. I'm speaking literally. It changes my gene expression. It makes my immune system stronger. It helps me fight infections. This is real.
Yeah, sure.
Research study after research study showing this.
Could I ask a question on that? So I read a thing about, obviously, coronavirus, how some people who were in care homes a bit older were dying because they didn't have that social connection or they didn't have anyone visiting them. So all of a sudden their health deteriorated and they just died.
Yeah.
So you were saying how good friendships can increase your immune system, right? But then going back to kind of like what Matt was saying about, you walk in through the doors of the church and sometimes it can actually feel like, you walk in, we made friends, you're in, but we don't go to that next step. Like going back to what Tori was saying, it's like, we're friends.
Yeah.
But we're not friends because you actually don't really know much about me.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? So it's like, how do you increase that? Is it just the whole sense of vulnerability, Yeah. Going back to the verse that Gary used last week about there's no greater love than for one to lay down their life. So is it me being vulnerable to you as a friend, would that increases the connection between us in order for my immune system to be like, so much stronger for me to be like, you know what, this is more than just an acquaintance type of friendship, but this is a long, long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's intentional, like you need to be intentional about that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a decision that we need to, and again, to answer your question, really it's how do we make this happen? How do we, right?
Yeah.
And it's by being very intentional, about making time, opening up a space where people can connect. It's, you know, that verse that you mentioned, that Gary mentioned. That's what it is. It's
that's huge.
Like that's massive.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea of the psychological and emotional safety that the brain needs in order to heal, which is that idea that I need to feel like you hold me, you hold my life in your head, in your heart, meaning you get it, you're here for me. And it doesn't have to be like sometimes, don't let that kind of idea that it needs to be something really deep and really, you know, yes, it needs to be deep, but don't let that stop the micro moments of love and connection either, because it's one moment after the other after the other. That's what it's about. So you can create a safety space for someone to really feel listened to in a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
Or you can, you know, make time and be intentional about, you know, devoting more time and more space for that person. But don't underestimate the micro moments of love and positivity resonance either.
Yeah.
And be intentional about really holding that person's, you know, Gary said it really well. I can't remember his words now. When he was closing the last week's conversation, he said something like...
Is it something, because it talks about laying your life down, right?
Yeah,
so it's not necessarily you dying for me.
Yes.
But me basically feeling like I can entrust you with all of my burdens. So all the things that is kind of like negative, bad, I could use different words.
He was listening.
But,
that's exactly what he said.
So it's like all the bad as well as the good. Because I've also like realized this, right? Just in friendships in general, inside church and outside church, is like being a friend to someone who's doing well in life and happy moments is always easy. It's great, you know. Let's laugh together. Let's be friends. You're the funny dude. But then it's like when this script flips.
Yeah.
So it's like, for example, let's say you do something silly or you lose your job or you've got that marriage breakdown. All of a sudden it's like, you're a bit of a mess. Like, I don't really want to be seen with you in this moment. So to me, that's what I think of the whole thing, laying down my life. Because, because, for example, because you have a bad reputation right now, me being seen with you, it's kind of like, what's Antonio doing with that heathen sinner type of thing? But it's me saying that, hold up, we were laughing together last week. We should be able to cry together this week as well. And would that also, for example, release the narrow...
That,
I'll go and eat at science in my GCSE. Sorry. But would it also release the...
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not just the good, but also the bad, I guess.
Well, it's being intentional, like you're saying, like, when it's difficult for you too. Like, you're saying, like, when a friend's, like, going through it and you would really love to just stay home and watch TV that night, but you know something's just happened and you're like,
okay, I've got to be
go to their house. Yeah, it's like when it's an inconvenience where I think sometimes people... Not always, but sometimes I think when people feel lonely, and I know because I've been in this position where I've been like, I'm so lonely, why does no one care about me? And then I'm like, well, who have I like called? Myself as well. Like I definitely, there was a distinct time in my life where I was like, everyone else has a best friend. Why do I feel like I don't have anyone? Why do I feel like I'm alone and I don't have like my people? And then I just sat there feeling really sorry for myself. Oh, poor me. Oh, my life sucks. And then I realized that I'm like, well, maybe I have to like, okay, it's uncomfortable for me to go, now I've got to be intentional. Okay, maybe I'll call Anna and just see if she wants to come over for dinner next week and we can hang out. And it's actually like,
Lock it in.
But it's me actually going,
Outdoors, though.
like, yes, of course, always.
6 meters, 6 meters, 2 meters, sorry.
6 meters.
Safety first, you know.
Always, I promise. But that's even what I was saying about before with rejection. I'm like, I might be scared of rejection. I might feel that I'm alone. I might think that you don't care about me. So if I stay in that way, I'm going to be alone. And I'm going to be very lonely and all that saying about how being with people brings life to you. And I'm going to not feel like that. But actually, like, I remember just having to go, okay, I've just got to, like, put myself out there. I've got to make that call. And the more I put, like, the more I pour into your friendship, the stronger our friendship's going to be. Like, I can't just sit there and wait for you.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes some people, and like I'm saying, I've definitely done it, where I'm sitting and waiting. That everyone to come, who's going to give me a call to hang out this week?
Yeah.
Maybe I need to be the one to give someone a call.
Exactly, because then that's kind of the whole idea of agency as well, which is another thing that is really important for the brain, is that everything is designed and it operates under that basic assumption that you are in control of what happens to you. So actually that sense of agency, even when you don't feel like it, it is what your brain needs and craves for. It will be a good thing for you. It helps to shift things internally, because you're not just, instead of just sitting and waiting, suddenly you choose to get up and you find the energy to do so, and you go and you feel so much better after, isn't it? It always happens. And the other thing also is, and also linked to that, is the kind of release of all sorts of happy neurochemicals that we experience when we decide to do something for the other person. And, especially when you choose to, especially when it costs something, especially when you're, like the example that you were giving, when he's down and it might cost you your reputation, whatever, and you still do it. That actually releases your oxytocin, serotonin, all the kind of the happy chemicals in your brain that ultimately, again, will give you life. They're like, they're nutrients, they're good things. So making those decisions will be great for the friendship and for that person. And in the end, it's great for you as well, by the way, because it's good for you.
So it'd be kind of like good for both of us.
Exactly. Exactly, because you're there for them, and at the same time, being there for someone else is incredibly healthy for you, for your mental health. It really is. And that's why, selfless acts of generosity, for instance, and kindness are also linked to a release of serotonin, which is the happiness hormone, which is really interesting, isn't it? Like, why does that happen? Well, I believe it's God's design. I believe that. But all that science shows me is that, doing those things are good for your brain. And I'm sitting there going, why is this like that? And, it's incredible. I believe it's God's design. Because we all need each other, and God needs us to need each other and to grow together as a church. That's what we are.
That is really amazing, isn't it? So what you're saying is, through this, we need each other. So I've got trauma in my life. I've found someone a friend who can help me. That's then when what you've just explained to us, that also adds to the healing, that will help bring about healing. Refill the bucket or whatever, if it's I don't know if it's as simple as that, but it's amazing it can sound so complex to get there. But actually, the way you've been explaining it, it actually is quite simple. That if there's an understanding or an empathy on one side, and almost like bravery, kind of what you were explaining before, there's like that leap of faith, like, can I give it another go? That there's absolutely a way, not just out of this, but complete freedom in it, which can come about from having friends. I want to ask a question, because when I first met my wife, she was the kind of person who would be like, everyone was her friend, So, if she
was.
Meaning like she would meet someone and then she's like, they're my friends. And
I believe that.
No, you just like, they didn't even point. So obviously, like, we've identified some great characteristics and traits of friendships and things like that. I've almost lost track of thought. I can just recall that conversation so vividly. But like, what's some other things that we can be doing? Because we can't have all of our eggs in one basket, right? Like, surely just one friend. Is it healthy to have one friend, or am I good to have 100 friends like she did, or is it How many friends is a good amount of friends?
How many friends is a good amount of friends?
Things like a friendship quota. Like sometimes, you're like, you know, you're trying to keep track of everyone.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, so maybe practically, but in terms of what's good for our head and good for our heart, like you're saying,
that's a good question.
what's a healthy amount of people to be sharing and processing life with?
Such a great question. First of all, can I say that my husband, Lee, is kind of the same.
Exactly the same. Okay. They'd be friends anyway.
Someone talks to him once and he's like, oh, that's my friend.
We need people like them.
That's true.
Oh, it's true. And people tell him everything. We go away on holiday and he's the one who's talking to everyone in the pool.
That's right.
And he knows everyone's life. And everyone knows my husband.
Do you want
we go for breakfast the next morning and people are bringing his favorite food.
His favorite food.
And I'm like, what is happening? How do they know? Anyway, he talks to everyone and everyone is his friend. How many people... I love that question, friendship quota. To be honest, I think there are two ways of looking at that. First of all, I would say back to the kind of creating positivity resonance and generating micro moments of love, seeing that as, you know, not just the Hollywood, the thing that, oh, this is the person that I love, but seeing that as, you know, any experience that I share with another human being that is a positive emotion.
Yeah.
That's a micro moment of connection and love. And actually, it's super healthy to look for that every day.
Yeah.
With as many people as you want.
So like in the barista.
Absolutely.
When I go to the dry cleaners, those little interactions.
Absolutely. So this is something that I try to do intentionally, although it's not my natural personality style, actually. I'm more that person who just, you know, I'm doing my thing and it's not natural for me to want to engage with other humans all the time.
Task focus.
But it's something that I do purposefully and intentionally when I remember to do so. Because I know it's good. It's good for other humans and it's good for me as well. So the more positive kind of moments that you can have, and I always see it as, you know, how can I make this person feel seen?
Yeah.
How can I make this person feel heard? Even if it could be a small thing.
Yeah.
Barista, whatever, hairdressers, whatever. And that's one perspective. That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And again, I guess it links back to that idea that we look at these deep relationships that we have with other human beings as these kind of destinations and these things that are very permanent. And actually, maybe we could look at it differently. We could look at it as, you know, again, emotions, they come, they dissipate. You only experience biobehavioral synchrony, by the way, the kind of biological rhythms getting in sync and behavioral rhythms mimicking each other. You only experience that when you're face-to-face with someone.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Which we haven't had a lot of,
Which
let's
is
be honest.
Literally. So
That's the other thing.
awkward right now.
So to be real, like this biological syncing of internal rhythms really only happens with face-to-face real connection with people, which means that if you're not face-to-face with that person, even if it's that friend, you might experience the thought or the construct of friendship and love that you have for that individual, but you're not experiencing the biological synchrony.
Right,
You only experience that when you're in the room with that person. So that also puts things into a different perspective when it comes to how we look at relationships with people. And I think, for me, I see relationships as something that really, I mean, I really believe that it's God's design. And it's something that can it adds life to us and to them and to all of us together. But it's, at the same time, it is precious when you are intentional about nurturing a connection with a few individuals. So you can't have too many because you only have 24 hours in a day to answer your question. So how many friends is good? Well, it depends on how much time you have, I guess. So it is good to be intentional and focused about devoting time to, you know, a few key people. And at the same time, I really believe it's a value to nurture any any micro moments of love that you can have with people, and that's why church is amazing, because it creates opportunity for all of us to do that.
Yeah.
Just a question on that. So, obviously, I've been part of our church for a while, and I've met loads of people. So then, not being rude, but it's like, I've realised that some people think that they're friends with certain people, and they're like, yeah, we're not as close as you think you are. So it's like, for example, Matt is like, oh yeah, Antonio's my best friend. But then I'm like, Matt's not my best friend. You get what I mean? It's just an example, right? So it's like...
We're finding out today.
Yeah.
We talk about that.
We'll talk after. But it's like, so what's a friend? Like, what is a friend?
Yeah, how do you have, like, the level...
Yeah, how
do you
do I
when
know
it's
the
level
levels?
one?
Yeah.
Because I could nurture this few here, but then it's like, how do I know who my friends actually are?
Yeah.
Like, maybe in my mind right now, because obviously through this chat, then I'm thinking it's like, are certain people maybe not my friends because they don't make me feel that you spoke about. So now I'm questioning that. So it's how do we know, especially in our Christian world, in a biblical sense, is how do we define what's an actual friend?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier and what Gary was saying the other day, which is, you know, those people that you truly would give, you know, you would hold their lives in terms of, you know, that kind of scripture that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And it's really those people that, you know, hold your life in their head, in their hearts, those people that you feel completely and unashamedly safe with opening up and you know, and process it and doing all the stuff that we've been talking about when it comes to like helping people process trauma and other things. I guess those are the ones. And again, and they're the ones that you are intentional about, because we choose to be those friends, and we choose those friends. I guess. I mean, that's my view. I guess you could have a different view that, you know, life just makes it happen. But I guess in adulthood, we tend to choose the close attachments that we form. And, you know, and again, it's a choice. So it's about being intentional, about making time and space for those people that you really, and then it's about how you make, you know, how you listen to those people as well. Because we have different ways of listening, different types of listening. And sometimes, you know, when, you know how sometimes you listen to fix something. You're listening, but you're listening to someone, but you're listening to yourself.
Generally a male response.
Yeah. How can I fix this?
Let me finish, because I know
How can I fix this? Or you listen to win.
Guilty.
You might say that's the female. Because you're listening, but you're thinking of, how am I going to win this conversation, this argument? Or you can listen to learn, which is great, but it's still about
Which has been a lot lately, the last few weeks.
True.
Has been
Listening.
of like help me to learn and understand.
Help me to learn, help me to understand. So you're listening to learn, which is great, because the outcome of that is, you know, a group of people who are more informed, more educated about, you know, what's happening, etc. At the same time, though, in this context that we're talking about, listening to learn is still about me gaining, learning and understanding.
Right.
So it's still about me. So it's still not about you. So I think there's a fourth way of listening, which is listening to connect, which is the Heidegger listening, the quote that I mentioned earlier, that you only know that you exist when you feel listened to. So what's that type of listening that you devote? It takes time and energy to sit down with someone and to really listen to you without any agenda, just because you want, like, you need to connect and you need to exist and you need to be seen and heard. And that's what I am for you. I'm helping you feel seen and heard. I'm helping you explore. I'm helping you exist. And that's what a true friend is, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's being like self-aware of, like we're saying, like the uneven friendships, like being aware then of like, okay, am I pouring lots into this and they are actually being a bad friend back too? Because there's something like that, is just uneven, and you're like, oh, I love them so much, and they're actually not being very nice. Like, they're not being a great friend back.
Yeah.
I think you can either, like I say, like, do you call them out on it? Do you just leave it? Do you leave the friendship? Like, because sometimes it's difficult. Like, I've seen friends and I'm like, why are you friends with that person? They're not nice. You need to stop. And I'm like, how do you like, I don't know about you guys, I see that all the time in people. And I feel like it's figuring out, I think it's quite difficult actually to be aware of, oh, this isn't, like Matt doesn't.
Maybe it's not working
maybe
anymore,
it's not.
friendship-wise.
Maybe I'm there for Matt, and whenever I call him because I need him to chat to me, he's never there for me.
Yeah, it's like it's a one-way thing. It's like all they do is talk about themselves.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
But I've got people.
That sounded so bad.
Trauma again.
So much trauma.
Whoa.
I think there's people in my life where I know I'm that person and I'm very happy to be it. But because I think that's one, it's, I think pastoring probably is that aspect. But when we're talking about friends, I think, there's probably a lifespan on those kinds of things where it's like, unless there is hey, but you're not asking about me.
Yeah.
Like every time I ask how your weekend was, you talk for half an hour about how it was. You don't even ask how mine was.
Yeah.
It's like, I've had plenty of those. Probably when we moved here even, it was just kind of like, oh, you're doing life there, I'm doing my life here, and kind of on we go with, so some friendships, it's almost like ships in the night just start to like drift apart. And I feel like that's okay. It's not like it was angry or aggressive.
Yeah.
That's how I've handled some of them. But others, it's just like, I think if I'm like, I really care about this person, I'm going to do whatever it takes to claw them back. And that's what I loved before. You were saying with your friend, like, I think you do what what probably a lot of people neglect to do, and that's go, I care about you, so I'm going to have the awkward conversation here and go, can we please try and figure this out somehow? And I think that's even something these days, because everything's like, we'll text it, or it's on Instagram or Facebook or that kind of thing. And so we live on a very digital kind of world. And so if you're saying we get it face to face, might have been the thing you and your friend had like lack time together. So tension's a little high.
Exactly.
Like things are weird, but actually if we step back, it's like, no, just maybe we've miscommunicated, or we've just not had that face-to-face time, which is the stuff where we've really built our foundation of friendship over. Because I admire it. Like, you've got friends from your schooling days, which you're like best buds with still. And I think that's amazing. Like how you've still continued that.
Yeah, and nurtured those relationships, which any relationship needs to be nurtured. So it is impressive to have really long relationships like that, and it's so special. But I completely agree with everything that you said. And
I was waiting for the but.
Yeah, you're saying but.
No, there's no but.
Actually, that's a bit rude, Matt.
There's no but. I just thought I completely agree, but then I'm like, I have to say something else.
No,
Go for it, Anna.
No, because what was it? Oh no, yes, what you were saying. You were commenting on like what you said, Tori, that sometimes it's kind of when there are moments in, I think, probably every relationship where things sometimes become a bit kind of one-sided, or or you feel like that. And I think the main thing. Yeah, and some of those exchanges can feel quite draining for you versus how they normally feel, because usually when you spend time with your friends, it usually gives you, and it's one of the things that energizes you, right?
Yeah, of course.
So when it feels draining, because it's all about giving and nothing that you're receiving, then it feels off balance, and that's when you experience those moments. I think the main thing is self-awareness. The main thing is probably being aware of that, because it could be okay as well, as long as you're aware that that's happening.
Yeah.
You see it happening. You feel how it feels, and you're okay with how it feels. Maybe it's a season where that person needs a lot more from you than vice versa.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's a season where that person is not seeing your needs, or you might not be feeling heard. That could be okay as well, depending on where you are and what you need, because you could be getting that from another friendship from someone else, and then you're still able to kind of, to sow into that friendship. So I think, again, it's about seeing friendships, these real deep connections with other human beings, as something that is, you know, it spreads across time and space, and it can be, you know, I have friends that, like you actually, I have a couple, and not a lot, but a couple of friends, and I've moved countries, and I still have that, especially that one friend, Christina, if you're watching.
Shout out.
To Christina from Portugal, and you know, since we were 11 years old, and every time I go back home, I spend time with her, and it's like we've gone back to, you know, and it's just so special. And there are, but that's an investment that you make, and that means that there'll be seasons where I'm going to give a lot more than I'm going to receive, and that could be okay as long as you're aware that that's happened. The problem is when you're in that situation and you're not even seeing it, and you get stuck into something that might not be healthy. But as long as you are aware and you're okay with what you know it, and you're okay with what you know, and it's okay.
They definitely take time, don't they? Friendships and like hard work.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, it's work.
It's hard work.
It takes a while.
Absolutely.
But being intentional and actually pouring into it, you get the
rewards
results.
Are amazing.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because we went 3 months without talking.
I'm not even going to bring that up.
Yeah, she went 3 months without talking to me.
Yeah, I was trying to say.
Talk to you. Did you talk to her?
No, Antonio, we had a bit of a fight, and then I was like, I can't with him anymore.
Anyways, but then one thing that I do respect out of that whole situation was that she was there when it mattered.
Right.
And I think that's a sign of like a good friendship.
Yeah.
Of, you know, we can still have a bit of conflict because we're humans, we're all broken, we're going to disagree.
Yeah.
But it's when it matters,
Great,
is when someone else is there.
And you know they're there when it matters.
Yeah. So in the good days, now I know it's like, it's going to be okay, really.
Yeah.
Because it was okay in a bad day, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so true. Guys, thank you. Do we all feel like we're better friends? No, I feel like we're better friends from this as well. We all got to share a lot together.
This is amazing.
And it was
really like
really
this
good.
conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you everybody for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. And we just want to encourage you, maybe there's someone that you need to call, or maybe send them a text, or go hang out in the park together. And maybe there's friendships you've realized you need to pour into. And we just want to encourage you as well, if you're feeling alone, or you feel like you don't have anyone, we just want to encourage you as well, just give somebody a call. Just maybe you just put yourself out there. There's plenty of pastors that you'll be able to talk to from our church. As a church, we're here for you, and people love you, I'm sure. So thank you for watching. See ya.